Okay, now we've assembled our part, we've looked at different render options, exploded views, etc. We're now going to move on to looking at producing a working drawing or an orthographic drawing. Again, really simple in CAD, in Onshape. All we do to create a drawing is go to our little plus symbol, our work, so insert new element, and there is a create drawing option there. Again, on our version, we've only got the free education one, so you only get two choices. You can either have an A3 one or an A4. For this one, I'm going to use A3. Click OK. What that'll do, that'll bring up a blank drawing page. So again, you might well have done some of these by hand in school. So basically, you've got a page border on there. Let me just move that over on there. Page border on there. A little sort of title block, information, all that type of thing. You can see if you zoom in some of the bits and pieces, like I say, it pre-fills in some of the boxes, so what your name and when you did the drawing, all that type of thing. The fact that it's A3, it will actually automatically put in what scale you produce. We'll talk about that in a second. Again, if you assign materials, it'll put things in weights. You can then add in what materials you're putting on that part, what finish you're putting on. However, the one thing you need to know is it defaults to first angle projection. Again, your teacher will probably tell you a little bit more about the difference between first angle and third angle. The reason for it use first angle is it's actually an American piece of software, and they use first angle projection as their sort of default drawing standard. We tend to use third angle in the UK, but like I say, I'll show you a little bit about the difference between the two. There's not a massive amount of difference. So, the first thing we do when we come to it, again, you can do a drawing of either the parts themselves, so the camera or the lens. You would just click on these options here. We're actually going to look at the assembly that we did, so the whole thing. So again, now that's the parts one. I'm going to hop over to the assemblies, and you can see it's brought up the little diagram there. So all I'm going to do is left click on that, and it will then convert that to a front view. So you can see perfect front view. And again, over here, if you needed to change that, you didn't want to start with the front view, you always tend to do that on a working drawing, but if not, you could actually change that to the top view if you like. You'll see if I leave it there, you'll get a perfect top view. But as I say, we'll leave it at that sort of default front view. Again, it says display all. This one here is the scale. So at the moment, that's actually true scale. So that means 1mm on your drawing is actually equivalent to 1mm in real life. Again, clearly they can be adjusted, depending on what you want to do, either smaller or larger. So you can actually have it twice the size. So, first numbers, the number of millimeters on the drawing, so that's 2mm of the drawing is equal to 1mm in real life. So it's basically twice the size of the real thing. We're going to stick to that 1:1 scale. It's about right. Again, you can customize that completely. So all we're going to do is then drop that image onto the page. Like I say, all these sort of things you can actually change later on, so don't worry too much if you start drawing it doesn't all fit on. You don't have to redo everything. It's quite a simple task. So I'm just going to drop our camera onto the page. Once I've done that, you'll see it's then flipped from this insert view to this projected view. So it's automatically now going to try and draw. You can see that the first one, if I draw above it, I'll just zoom out a little bit. Don't worry about it not meeting on the page. You can see there, it's then drawn a perfect view of actually what you'd see underneath. If I then click on the middle view again and go down, it then produces the sort of perfect top view. Again, if I click on the middle view and then go to the right, it gives me that projected view to the right. And again, if I click on the middle, go to the left, it then produces the perfect. So again, it does all the sort of drawing calculations. You can see as a working drawing, everything always aligns up. So it's always horizontally aligned and then vertically aligned. You can actually do all the other different views as well. So if I go to this corner, you can see I can produce an isometric view, and I can do an isometric view of any sort of orientation. That seems to be the standard one. Again, once you've done that, you might find that I just keep getting more and more views. If you just click off the projected view, you can then start playing about. So realistically, that's like every single view you could ever think about having on a drawing. And in reality, there's no reason why you can't have them all. We tend to sort of think, am I gaining anything? Like I say, that view and that view is basically showing the exact same view. So I wouldn't really have both of them on there. It's only if it had a more complicated shape and I had to have both of these views at this side that I would add them on. Again, exactly the same with the sort of top view and the bottom view. Again, quite often you just end up having one of the views rather than both of these. So in the textbooks and things like that, you probably just see these sort of 3 views, or you'd use these 3. But in theory, you can actually have all 5. Like I say, we'll just use that isometric to, I'll just put that out of the way at the moment. So you can see it clearly doesn't fit on the page if we do it that way. One thing I mentioned, like I said, is at the beginning of the video, is this idea of first angle. So what that means is, whatever so if I imagine an arrow looking at the bottom of this camera, whatever I see, looking from the bottom up at this camera, I then project it on the far side. That's how I remember it. First angle, project on the far side. So what, again, if I had an arrow pointing down towards this camera, so I was looking straight down, I would then project that view at the far side of it. Exactly the same there. So again, if I was looking towards the camera this way, when I draw it, I then project it on the far side. That's actually the opposite way around than we do it in the UK, but again, it doesn't really matter. So what I'm going to do, I'm not going to really look at these top views, so all I can do, hover over them, left click, I can actually delete that view. I'm going to delete this view as well, so hover over it, left click, delete the view. I'm then going to drag this the first one that we did. You'll then see it'll realign all the rest. And again, it always realigns the view, so everything's always aligned vertically and horizontally. As I say, I'm probably going to run out of space for this little view here, but what I'm going to do, like I say, I can't fit that on, it goes on my title block. Again, if I select that and then look at just deleting that one, so again I can either we'll come back to that projected view a little bit later on. So that's our sort of standard orthographic drawing at the moment. Again, I might just space that out a little bit more. What you tend to do on a working drawing is you tend to add the hidden detail. So again, I'm going to select, just by clicking my left mouse button, all them views. If I right click, you can then at the top you can see it says show hidden line. So that'll show any hidden detail on our drawing. So really the only hidden detail we've got is a very simple one, is this idea of the cutout at the front. But again, you can imagine that if that was a more complicated drawing, it would show some extra details. Once I've done that, I then might want to add on some centre lines. So these are all the centre line ones. So again, we tend to always put a centre line on the centre of circles or cylinders. So I'm just going to click on the centre mark and just click on one of the circles. Again, you just see that. It allows me to dimension from the middle outwards on these sort of things. And again, we tend to also put a centre line here. Again, you know, if you get used to using working drawings a lot, you'll understand that because you know, if you didn't have this view, it'd be difficult to understand whether that's a rectangle, that view, or it's a cylinder. So the idea of putting a centre line on is just to help people understand that it's a cylindrical object. So again, I've clicked on this 2-point centre line this time. I'm just going to zoom in. I'm going to select the sort of midpoint here, and then draw that centre mark across there. So just puts that little centre line. The centre line is a long dash, little dash, long dash. Then I'm going to do exactly the same on this view here. So again, start in the middle, get this little arrow. Again, that indicates that it's perfect 90 degrees, basically a little right angle symbol, so you know you've got it perfect 90 degrees. Sometimes you have to redo them because sometimes it doesn't quite snap to the right place, but that's got our centre lines on, so that's the basics of what we would add on to a normal working drawing. Like I say, centre of any circles, centre of any cylinders, just helps the person who's making the object, because again, that's why it's called a working drawing, so they would just get this drawing to work from. Clearly, we then need to add on the dimension. So I'm just going to click off centre line, and then we go to this icon here, which is adding on the dimension. Again, very, very simple, very much like when you're creating a part. We tend to just add, if possible, dimension lines either below the drawing or to the left of the drawing. Again, depending on how complicated and what you need to do, you sometimes have to have them at the opposite sides and things like that, but that's the norm. So I'm just going to dimension this. So you can see I hover over the line, goes orange, left click, and then drag the dimension line out. Again, number you want to try and get in the middle, and it'll add that dimension on for you. I'll do the same with the height. So again, try and keep it so it's not really close. ideally should be about sort of 12-15 millimeters away from your drawing. I'm then going to add on this one again, very much like the part. I could select the line, or I can select the point, so I could dimension it from that point to that. It's exactly the same method. You'll see it does a bit more of this inferencing, because again on a working drawing we're trying to keep all our dimensions in line, nice and neat, so that'll align everything that way. I'm then going to add a few more. Again, it's probably easier to draw, like I've just said about dimension below, it's probably easier to draw the dimensions here. So again, I'm going to go, again, try not to draw onto the drawing, that's a definite sort of no-no, other than radiuses. So you always want your dimension lines off your drawings. And again, I could dimension that one at the top, all that. Again, you know, plenty that you could do here. One thing that you don't need to do is, quite often people sort of double dimension. So realistically, I already know that it's 45mm here, so I wouldn't need to dimension this one. So you can see that's exactly the same. So again, tend not to worry about that. Again, if you do dimension, you want to delete it, you know, you can either just click off the dimension button itself, double click on it, not on the number, and then just click delete on your keyboard and actually get rid of that, or right click, again I'm just going to get rid of that box. He says. Just going to go back, that's it. Just click back to the dimension. It's really, so again, that little line is basically telling me that I've actually double dimensioned it. Like I say, if you don't want to do that, just click off it, select it, don't select the number, just click off on it with the left mouse button, click delete, it'll remove that that dimension line. So they're the basic sort of linear ones. Obviously I could add more and more. I'm going to add a different view in a second to show the detail of that. So we've got the basic dimensions. Again, we tend to have it drawn as a sort of black and white, but obviously with the sort of CAD packages these days, we can actually change these. So if we wanted to, we could select it, right click, we could actually do it as a shaded view. Sometimes if it's a very complicated drawing, it might be easier, so you can see it puts the colour back on. Like I say, it tends to not be the done thing, should we say, on a working drawing, but again, it's a personal choice realistically. Like I say, if it's getting a bit close to the top, we can always just move it down. Again, it'll align everything just so things are not really on top of each other. We're then going to add some of the sort of other details. So you can see if I click on the little arrow next to the dimension icon, I can put things like the diameter. So I'll put the diameter of this circle here. I can also do it as a radius. Again, you tend not to do that. But, stick with one, but I can also do a radius. I think that just shows you that you can do both options. So I can do a radius, or from the centre outwards, or the diameter all the way across the middle. Again, that's the diameter symbol there. So what else do we need to add on to that one? So potentially, we don't know how long the lens is. So I might add that distance on here. So again, try and keep it all aligned. We don't know the height of that. We can add that distance on. 20mm, another thickness there. And you know, you can add as many details as obviously is required. One thing you might do, obviously, there's a lot of information here that you would potentially struggle putting on because it's quite small. So what we can do, we've got this spot here, it's a detailed view. Quite a nice tool, this one. So we can actually, basically draws a circle, so I can click in the middle on my left mouse button, draw that, and then it draws a diagram that's twice as big. And again, when I drop that on the page, you'll see it'll add that as a sort of a bigger detailed view. I then might want to dimension that. It's a bit easier to draw on a detailed view, so I could add those measurements that way. Save me trying to do it all on that. Again, like everything, I can move that where I want to. If I'm not happy with that, I could potentially move that, you know, over out the way, that type of thing, just to try and make our drawing a bit easier to read. I might put it in that top corner actually. That's quite nice. So again, that's a detailed view. Again, our camera is relatively straightforward and all that type of thing, but I'm going to just show you the next one, which is something that you quite often use, is a section view. So section view is basically, wherever this line is here, it would imagine it's cutting this camera in half, and it'll show you like the internal details. That's it. We haven't got much internal detail, so it'll end up very much like this, but again, I could do it either as a vertical one or a horizontal one. I could cut anything, whichever way you want. I'll just do a vertical one to start with, so I'll do one right through the middle there actually, so I'll go right through the centre of that. Again, you'll see, again I'm just going to drag it off the page. It will then produce a sort of, as if you've sawn that piece of wood in half, and you then see what's on the inside. Again, you can actually drag that. Again, it tends to always align up, so that's the problem with section views. You would either have a section view or not, but you get the idea of hopefully what a section view is. Again, I'm just going to delete that because it doesn't quite fit on the page. I did mention about sort of isometrics. Again, sometimes on a very complicated drawing, I think, oh, it's getting complicated, I don't really understand it, so we can add this projected view on again. So I'm just going to click on that projection view, select our first one, try and get our isometric again. One thing that we can do, if I just click on this this sheet section, I can actually, it's taking a bit of time to load. Oh, sorry, it's drawn another one. I'll just click off that view, I'll just minimise that. Again, what we can do, I can actually change that. So I might do that one as show shaded detail rather than it all been see-through. And just drag that out of the way. And then what I can do, again, if I left click select it, I can actually change the properties. So view properties, again, so this is very similar there. So again, I can then actually change that. So I might do that as a little half scale drawing, or a third scale drawing, all that type of thing. Again, half's a little bit small, but we'll stick with that. But again, you can see I can add that little detail on my drawing there. Sometimes just helps to explain. Again, I'm just going to take off the hidden detail as well, so it's just a basic diagram. So you can sort of see sort of three basic things we've looked at there: detailed view, section views. Like I say, I've left that one off, and adding on a sort of a 3D view. So that's the sort of basics of producing a working drawing. Again, we can then complete the working drawing by adding a title, things like that. So obviously you can do 3 different spaces. So tend to double click in the middle, type in the name. Once we rotate, again you can change all the font size, all that type of thing, but to stick it there. Again, we could add in a material, so I'll just do the basics of what we made the main part out of. Finish, wax polish, something like that, and you can see the rest of it is fine. You can see it's got the basic scale now projecting there. So that's our basic working drawing finished. Again, what you can do on a working drawing is actually export it as a PDF. So on the drawing tab at the bottom, if you right click export, you can see I can change it to a PDF and other bits and pieces, but PDF is the standard one. Just click export. It will then open up your drawing in a PDF version. So sometimes easier to do that if you're wanting to put it into your folder. Again, we're sort of moving towards electronic portfolios these days, so that's quite a nice thing to do. So you can see there, you get a better resolution image of your work that way. So hopefully that's covered the basics of working drawings and drawing in first angle.